the month is the Evolution Revolution. And I would like to acknowledge our videographer today, which our viewing audience cannot see, but this is Julian Paul Hernandez, who actually was the first in our community to sign up for the Evolution Revolution by Neil Donald Walsh, who his famed Conversations with God. And Neil was also in my congregation in San Diego. And San Diego, you know, is a very prolific, populated place. And I had 3,000 people showing up every week, and Neil was one of them. And Neil was a ghostwriter and was making people famous. And he went through a very, very critical time in his life, and he called me. And I said, you know, Neil, you are such an amazing writer. You need to start writing your own books. And so what, 30 books later, as we stand here, all these years later, and the contribution, the amazing contribution Neil has made. And this is God's message to the world. And you've got it all wrong. And what he means by that is that most people view God as this very vengeful, wrathful God sitting in a big throne with a little black book taking notes, and the third time you're out. And it's an anthropomorphic God. We believe that God is energy. Be still and know that I am God. That we are co-creators with this energy. And that wherever we go, that one goes before us and prepares the way as we become a lamp unto our own feet, drawing others into our light and energy field out of our own consciousness. And the world is the sum total of every conscious thought. It's called the collective consciousness. And it uplifts the energy and frequency of the planet. It is also the sum total of all the collective unconsciousness that looks to the negative, vibrates to that frequency, never going to get it right, judges, looks outside itself, criticizes. But we know every loving thought is true. And everything else is a call for healing or help, regardless of the form it takes, as the Course in Miracles states so beautifully. So I recommend to our viewing audience and to all of us, God's message to the world. And it is right in synchronicity with Science of Mind Principles by Dr. Ernest Holmes. That our God is a loving God. Our God is not even a forgiving God, because as Jesus said, what is there to forgive? I haven't condemned thee. There's nothing to forgive. So energetically, as we open the space and we carry around our little hurts, our wounds, and those energies, the truth is, as we breathe deeply and release that there's nothing to forgive. There's only experiences. Some of the experiences have caused us great suffering. And I believe that when we arise, as Dostoevsky stated, that I may be worthy of my sufferings, that I arise and I see my life in its grandeur, and that I would not be who I am without those experiences. As painful as they were, we would not be who we are. And some of us drag around those old stories of all, you know, they're like old war stories of every experience that we've ever had, and we keep telling it and retelling it. We need a new story. And it reminds me, I was, Catholic at one time, and now I'm a graduated Catholic. Not recovering, As I had a very positive experience in Catholicism, wonderful experience. And Father Falvey just loved me, and he used to say, oh, you're not a Marilyn Monroe, you're a Grace Kelly. He planted that seed, right? And so he told me a funny story once. And it was about a woman that kept going to confession, and she'd had this illicit affair, and she kept going into the, amazing details of it. And so the father confessor said, forgive thee, child, you have sinned, 7 Hail Marys, 10 rosaries, blah, blah, blah. And so she'd go back every week. Oh, Father, bless me, I've sinned. And she'd go all into the intimate details of this illicit affair, and on and on. He goes, child, you've been forgiven for the last 5 weeks. Why do you keep coming back? And she said, oh, I don't know, Father, I just love to hear myself talk about it. Right? Our story. And once we release our story, we are free. We no longer identify with that energy. So when we are looking at the evolution revolution, it has nothing to do with violence. It has, I will resolve to evolve. I will move past all of those experiences that I've been dragging along, and I will free myself so that I can be of service to myself, others, and ultimately the planet. Because once we heal our own issues, we can be of service to others. Otherwise, we're projecting on others. We're projecting outside of ourselves. You know, did you hear the tone of their voice? You get in the elevator and someone says hello and you wonder what they meant by that. You know, that kind of thing. Make a profession of being offended, right? And it's just as detrimental to give offense as it is to take offense. And once we open the space to allow God to do what God does best by means of us as a vehicle, because each of us is a vehicle of the divine. The divinity within me salutes the divinity within you. And the divinity within you salutes the divinity within me. And if I am in that place in me and you are in that place in you, behold, there is only one of us. Fear knocked at the door. Love answered. Behold, no one was there. Because love is the strongest healing power in the universe. And I love that Neil talks about the ground of being of the universe is love. And that this God that people worship, and they have all these rules, and they quote the Old Testament. It was written by men, you know, with poor memories, a lot of them. You know, it was 300 years later, right? So we've got to realize that there is an opening, that Moses brought the law, Jesus brought love. He was totally non-judgmental. And he said, this commandment I give thee, that ye love one another as I have loved you. Love ye one another. That was the only commandment he ever gave. He didn't go up to some mountain and get pissed off and throw it down and have to go back up again, you know, to rewrite it. Be still and know that I am God. Be still and know that that energy, that power, that love is right where I am. There is no spot where God is not. And when we get that, when we get part, you know, and it's interesting, we're all subject to the human condition. And we all go into our little thing. But I have an egg timer. And it's 2 minutes. So I can just get totally, you know, upset for 2 minutes. And when it's done, it's done. So you get on with your life. We have these little things that arise. We don't want to drag them with us. It is so counterproductive to do that. Our way of life is so beautiful. Be still and know that I am, that holy I am presence within each and every one of us, God. We are co-creators with God. Ernest Holmes said, when you create a higher standard for man, woman, you create a better God. In other words, the thing we're looking for, we're looking with. So I see you through my own lens. And have you ever noticed there are sympathetic vibrations out there? And people get together and it's so awful, and you know, they're shaking their fists and they're doing all the things. That's a sympathetic vibration. It's a frequency. It's an energy. Others come together in prayer. And I noticed someone on Facebook who was touting a wonderful book by Marshall Rosenberg, who used to come to my ministry in San Diego as well. And the book is called Speak Peace. And he was talking about speaking peace and the energy of peace. And someone came on and said, yeah, if I'm part of the jihad and I just take a gun and I unload it on you, then what? What? And he said, I would have a new opportunity to go within and be totally present in those last moments of my life and pray for the one that had such suffering and felt so unloved that they looked outside themselves to hurt another human being. I thought, what a response. What an amazing response to be totally present to where we are at any given moment. I love the story about the two little monks walking in the forest, and suddenly two tigers appeared, and the one ran and ran and the other went up a tree, and when he ran he came to this great great cliff, and there was no place to go, and he looked down. Guess what? There's a tiger below, and there's a tiger on his tail. And so he kind of crawled down the craggy cliff, praying for safety. Very zen. And at that moment, he saw a strawberry growing out of the craggy cliff. And there was the tiger above him and a tiger below him. And being so present and engaged in the present moment, he reached out, plucked the strawberry, tasted it. It was magnificent. If this was his last conscious act, what a way to go with strawberries. So as we are in the world, but not of it, and practice mindfulness and our reactions and the opportunity that's there for us, especially in this political climate. And beyond politics, I was sent something so beautiful. And it was to Hillary Clinton. And she was asked, how do you stand all being a politician and being in the forefront of all this fire? How do you stand it? And she said, well, Henry Nouwen, who was an old monk, wrote a book called Gratitude. And every day I look for what I can be grateful for. And I bring this example to the altar because she is certainly in the firing range of so much. But to say, I look to see what I am grateful for. And to mention Henry Nouwen, who is a mystic in his time. And to quote the energy of gratitude, which is really the brightest beam to heaven, the very brightest beam to heaven. Because things are not always what they seem. There's a legend about two angels, and they knocked on a great mansion, and they needed housing for the night. And the footman came, and he went to the great Lord, and the Lord said, put them down in the basement. We have room there. And they went down to the very cold basement, and there was a hole in the wall. And before they slept, the one angel repaired the hole. And the other angel thought that was very strange. They were being so rude and not very hospitable, and certainly not generous for you to fix that hole in the wall. And the first angel, the elder angel, said, things are not always what they seem. They went on traveling, and they came to a little hovel, and they knocked on the door, and a couple saw them and greeted them and shared what little food they had, and then put them in their bed. And that night, they slept soundly. And the next morning, they went down to the kitchen, and the couple were crying and in tears. Their cow had died in the night, and it was their only means of sustenance and to receive employment through selling the milk from the cow. And the second angel was just furious and said, we went to a mansion, and the Lord of the manor put us in the basement. You repaired the hole in the wall. And yet, we come here to this loving couple who had nothing and gave all. I don't understand. And the first angel said, things are not always what they seem. When we were down in the basement, shivering, I noticed something twinkling through the hole in the wall, and looked through, and there was massive, massive store of gold. And since the Lord of the manor was so filled with greed, I sealed it up so that he would never find it. And when we went to the couple's home, and we were in bed, the angel of death came and was going to take the wife in the bed, and I offered the cow instead. Things are never what they seem. And when we understand that things are never what they seem, that we cannot judge the appearances, the conditions, and the effects, because there is a greater good that is coming through. It's not as we envisioned it. It doesn't look like how we pictured it. We think this stuff doesn't work. We begin to suffer. We learn nothing by continual suffering. Dr. Holmes states that when we learn our lessons through intuition and inspiration, that's a higher vibrational frequency, and we don't repeat it with monotonous regularity. We learn, we grow, we move on, because things are not always what they seem. So when we look at our own evolution and the revolution that's going on, and actually looking at humanity's team, and I love that Neil coined, and this grassroots movement, humanity's team, is out there actively looking at what needs to be healed, sharing compassion, sharing the energy to do what we can where we are with the tools that we have. And one of the things that this great nation was founded on in the Declaration of Independence, and I want to share this very mystical story. It's about the 13 colonies, and our founding fathers were arguing amongst themselves because if they signed that Declaration of Independence, they would lose their lives. They would lose their families if they were ever discovered and ever found. And they were squabbling amongst themselves and arguing amongst themselves. And a man stood up and he said, "Sign that parchment. Though you are in fear of your lives, sign that parchment. Though you may be hung by the neck, sign that parchment. Though you may be run out of the village, sign that parchment. For every slave that there is freedom. For every mechanic, there is hope. For every person, there is a new life. Sign that parchment. This is what you were given to do. This is your divine appointment. This is what you are called to do. Sign that parchment." And he went on poetically. And at the end of his speech, they all gathered, all of them. And, of course, John Hancock grabbed the pen first. And they all signed that parchment, the Declaration of Independence. And they went and turned to thank the gentleman in the room. And he was gone. The doors were locked. No one could come in. No one could go out. He was gone. The angel of the presence, the angel, the energy that we allow to come forth, is that angel of the presence who carries healing in its wings. Today we're here to acknowledge the evolution revolution begins within ourselves. It begins with the energy of love. It is the ground of being. I think we're pretty good now. And it opens a greater space for us. And Will Durant wrote a Declaration of Interdependence. And I'm going to share it with you today because I feel it is just so very, very powerful. And I think it takes it to the next level, acknowledging our own evolution and our resolve to evolve. And one of the things that I received a letter from President Obama when I received it was the Call to Service Award. And he said, "Our nation faces the most challenging economic crisis in a lifetime. We will only renew America if we all work together. Individuals, the private sector, and the government must combine efforts to make real and lasting change so that each person has the opportunity to fulfill his or her potential." And I just love this. So I'm going to share with you two things that are very, very special to me. And this is Interdependence Day. And Melanie Bacon took Will Durant's Interdependent Declaration and created this. "We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all life is interconnected and endowed by our Creator with certain inalienable rights and responsibilities. that among these are presence, compassion, and the pursuit of happiness. That to secure these rights and responsibilities, we open our minds and hearts to the needs of others and our own true needs. We hear the sound of the living universe in our ears and add our voices to the song. We live every moment with awareness of the purity and power of existence. And for the support of this declaration, we pledge to each other our love, our breath. For the freedom of the one is the freedom of the all, and the pain of the one is the pain of the all. The breath of the one is the breath of the all, and the breath of the all is the breath of God. In that we live and move and have our being in the presence, in the energy of our oneness, because we are all one, beyond color, race, creed, or sexual orientation. Our God is a God of oneness, and we are guided and directed to go to a higher place. And where are we going? Higher yet. Where? Higher yet. Where? Higher yet. And so it is. God bless you.